Hello. It's been a while. So I thought we'd take a look at the OBMX today. That's been in the studio probably for about 5 years now, and it's not something I use every day, but when I want some really unique textures, it's pretty much a go-to box. So as many of you would know, it was designed by Don Buchler in the early 1990s, and this was at a time when Oberheim had been taken over by Gibson. There's a well-known history of Don not really working well with other companies. They tried it with CBS and they obviously tried it with Gibson. So one of the frustrations that it seems Don had with the synth was Oberheim used parts that were, in Don's mind, substandard, and actually, in some cases, the wrong parts. On mine, I always feel the envelope is a little too sharp on its attack, and you can sort of hear that in the patches. It doesn't make my OBMX very good for pads, or at least pads played on there. I can always sample it into the Quantum or the Fairlight, which is just back there. So the OBMX can go up to 16 voices. Unfortunately, most of the OBMXs out there have 2 voices. I'm really fortunate that mine has 4 voices, but trying to find those voice cards pretty much is impossible. They're really complex as well. They're pretty much cutting-edge technology for the time in some ways, and other ways not. Don chose to use the SEM oscillators, and they are incredibly unstable. Now, that adds a huge amount of warmth, it adds real character to the synth, but if you're going to try and gig with this synth, you're going to get random outputs every time. So when this synth came out, it was largely misunderstood, or maybe it just didn't really fit what the market was after at the time. We'd already gone through digital controlled oscillators, so people were used to seriously rock-solid tuning by this point. Out comes the OBMX, and it is out of tune at best. Like, there are moments where it's beautifully in tune, and then the rest of the time it's very characterful. So that sort of went against it. There are a lot of really humongously bad reviews. People complaining about the buttons on mine as you turn the knobs. The knobs don't track in a linear fashion. They sort of get lost a little. So you turn a knob from 0 to 100, then you turn it back to 0, and sometimes instead of hitting 0, it'll hit 20 or 15. And then the only way to get it to go back to 0 is to go back to where that 20 or 15 is and then wind it back again. There was a later firmware which I haven't installed on mine. My understanding is when you change something in this synth, you've got to retune the voice cards, and the tuning of the voice cards is done by a special piece of software, and it's just a huge amount of effort. So I haven't gone down that track, and I quite like it exactly the way it is. So there are some really cool and pretty unique features on this synth. I'm going to show you 3 of them today. So the first thing you'll notice about the Oberheim is when you turn it on, it has to tune the voices. Now, this is sort of one of the strengths, but also a weakness in this synth, that it takes a really long time for the voices to warm up and to get to a stable level. I've measured it 20-30 minutes to really get into the zone. Interestingly, a lot of other Buchler gear that I've used was pretty much the same. So it's on my expander patch. So you can see down the bottom right there, you get a voice status that shows you each of the voices that are playing. So you can hear there's just a little bit of instability. So I want to take a look at 3 different things today. One is the VCA, which has this wonderful VCA offset. The other thing is the saturation on the VCOs. This thing, at least my OBMX, saturates really, really easy. And the last thing today will be the LFOs, and the way the LFOs actually have some very unique features that you probably see in modular, but I've never seen these on a synth before. So let's move to another patch. So here's a patch where I've intended to use the VCA. I've actually set the patch up so it largely plays itself and sort of is very good for a wash in the back of a track or something like that. So the offset, as you can hear, allows you to bypass the envelope. So one of the ways to think about this is it's a mixable bypass for the envelope generator on the amplifier here. So we've got two types of filters here. One's called a Minimoog and one's supposed to be an Oberheim. I really don't think either of these filters sound very much like either of those. The Oberheim's probably close. It's got that classic band pass, bypass, high pass, low pass to it. But the Minimoog, it's to me, it's more like an 18 dB filter. Does not sound like a Minimoog at all. So let's just go for VCO1. I'm coming in at 29 there. And you can hear it's nice and clear by itself. There's nothing strange going on. Now, the interesting thing is when I mix in a second oscillator, that's where it starts getting really crunchy. We're already starting to modulate against each other. Let's go to the extremes. So at this point, it reminds me a lot of the VCS3, that it's starting to really grind the oscillators against each other in a very pleasing way with, you know, this is some really nice harmonic distortion on it. Now, let's have a play with the filter on this. So instantly we've got really interesting effects going on. It's not what you would really expect to hear from an analog synth. It sounds like a hybrid between analog and digital somehow. Let's play with the cutoff. And instantly you can hear one of the things that people got really, really grumpy about. That it's being a digitally scanned front panel. The cutoff steps like crazy. Let's bring this back down to something a bit more sensible. So there's still a little bit of overdrive on the VCOs, but personally I find if I play it around 15, that's when it becomes the cleanest, but we're still getting a decent amount of volume. So let me take the resonance out. So let's open the filter a little again. So one of the other things that's really quite unique about this synth is the way the LFOs work. So if we go to the LFO, you can see here we've got a wave shape. Now that's pretty standard. Sample and hold. We've got an offset. But the interesting thing is, if I set the sample and hold to 5 and then add that in, so the sample and hold sort of gives you a very basic random sequencing actually on the LFO. So as you might have guessed, if you set it to 2, you're getting 2 different voltages. Set it to 3, we'll get 3 different voltages. They're not random though. It obviously has sampled the voltages and then locked them in. So let's choose a different waveform. And once again, we've hit the limit of the potentiometer. We've still 20 to go, which is sometimes a little frustrating. Let's add the filter back in. Slow it down. So it's good to be back. I hope to do more video clips and to do them more frequently. One of the things I've noticed, especially over the last year, is the general quality of videos has gone through the roof, which unfortunately my videos, which were looking okay for a very long time, now look crazily low rent. So I'm trying to bring up the quality, trying to use better lighting, trying to use different cameras. I hope you like the new look. Before I go, I've just got to push the album that I released a few weeks ago, which is Lander. This is my first collaboration album with Charles Urban, and it's over at Bandcamp at lander2.bandcamp.com. Please do check it out.